Good evening. I am the narrator, and welcome to my parlor. Tonight's story is Stargazer. The antique store downtown, its walls lined with shelves, its shelves lined with items. Plates, glasses, cutlery, lamps and carpets, vintage books and periodicals, all old, all used, gently, all costly. Priced solely according to the whims of one man who watched hawk-like from his counter. It smelled like must, like age, but in a good way, the depth of history curling about one's nostrils. It was a place to lose oneself in. I did every evening, after school and before dinner. I strode to the counter and withdrew my wallet. There I produced the $500 I had so toiled for. Locked eyes with him and laid forth each crisp bill. He stared at me, then at my earnings, his eyes widening as the stack rose. After months of refusal, he had to succumb. We both knew it was mine. It was the telescope I first spotted in his window the year before and since pursued. It stood 10 inches from top to bottom, its lens refracting thanks to Alvin and Sons. It was crafted by hand, not on an assembly line, not from wood but from brass without a speck of rust. Still, it worked like new, showing its craftsmanship. I knew from the one in-store use he had allowed before he quickly tore it back. As for its age, he knew not precisely, but guessed the 1890s. My sole obstacle was price. He assured me it was well beneath its true value, but on it he would not budge. He never thought they would part, never thought I could afford it. I proved him wrong, however, through many afternoons on my father's riding lawnmower. It took time and effort, what doesn't, but in the end was nestled in my arms. "Enjoy it," he sighed as he rang the register. "I will," I affirmed and winked. I walked home slowly. I had just obtained my prize and would not shatter it on cement. The awnings and turrets of the businesses beside me were but faint impressions, so entranced I was. I sensed him watching from his window. In my neighborhood, the well-kept Victorian homes were as ephemeral. At mine, I gently stood my prize in the front porch and rang the doorbell. Mother opened to find me grinning. She gazed at me, then at it. "Come in." Dinner went as always. Father griped of his workday. Mother appeased him. My brother stuffed his face, and I strained to ignore the lot. I was confident the night would go smoothly. Father hadn't noticed my telescope. He never noticed anything. And my brother was thankfully short on intellect and reach. My interest in the stars began early and had endured to the time of these events. However, I was always at best a poser, lacking my own device. Still, every month I read all I could on the subject. The general store stocked the magazines. Now at long last I would join their writers. Father read his paper and listened to his sport game on his radio. "Meh," he grumbled and retired for the evening. Mother followed. My brother, who I was keen to avoid, followed her. Alone at last, I gathered my telescope and notebook and slipped into our backyard. There I stood it in the center, seemingly the best place. I crouched and peered through the lens. First I saw the major constellations, having seen them already with just my eye. Now I did so in full detail. Ara, Aquarius, the Big and Little Dipper, all were there as if I were long awaited. Then the moon. Long had I beheld its spots, its craters, but only from afar. Now I would see them in relief. Did indeed a man call it home? I was soon to learn. I aimed, squinted, and, alas, one didn't. A minor disappointment at best. I then saw something else, something I never had before, a ball of light slowly emerging as from nowhere. Gradually it grew and assumed an egg-like form. It then began bobbing up and down, splitting in small versions of itself before reuniting and vanishing altogether. I watched dumbfounded. I didn't even notice the burn in my eyes and nostrils, or the grass beneath me as it withered and died. Not until the next day. I shook with excitement. I had seen for the first time a new celestial phenomenon. My discovery and mine alone. The implications were vast. The exposure, the awards, the accolades, my place in history secured. Thousands would know my name. Thousands I did not know. I marked the date, time, and coordinates, then lifted my scope and hurried inside. There I paused at the window, gazed upon the sky and my device, and smiled. My plan was simple. I would return the next night to the same coordinates. I would bring my camera and await the light's return. There I would record it, make copies, and share it with the field. My finest hour, I marveled. as I slid my telescope beneath my bed and myself between its sheets. The next day went as normal. While mowing, my father found the scorched spot and reacted predictably. My brother tried to plan it until he yelled and pulled him off. Mother shrugged and returned to her chores. All the while, anticipation swelled. Such events were mere footnotes. I sighed merrily when my family at last retired for the evening and leapt to action. I had no time for mundane sights. My subject soon appeared, seeming as energized as I. The swirl of color, the gradual expansion and acquiring of form, the culmination. Only now the festivities continued. It swelled to the moon's proportions. When it split, its copies danced like jitterbugs. The night before paled in contrast. I could barely hold my camera straight, but still I did not fail. Afterward, I clutched it to my chest, so as not to drop or impair it. I returned the camera inside first, and then the telescope, and at last unwound in the den. I had to develop the photos quickly. Luckily, Father kept a basement studio. While he'd long abandoned the hobby, he kept his equipment. With sleep beyond me, I continued my work. I descended the steps, camera in hand. I did so quietly. He didn't mind my using his equipment, but did mind being woken. I removed the film and began the process, preparing the chemicals and submerging it therein. Time, temperature, and agitation were essential. I was careful to avoid error. Hours passed, and I watched the progress closely. I could not botch this. My career depended on it. The worst fleshed in my mind. At last they were complete, and I pulled them gently from the liquid. So far, so good, I murmured, as I fixed them to the hanger. More time passed. I could only stand in the corner, finger to my lips. Had I followed the steps correctly? One never knows. At last they dried and were ready for inspection. Carefully as I could, I detached each and laid them across the counter. I expected and got the worst, though not as expected. As I brought them to my eyes, I saw perfection. There was but one problem. My shapes weren't there. I was shocked. My camera worked. My light sufficed. The photos showed the moon, the stars, the nocturnal clouds and treetops, all but my discovery. I considered their constituent matter. Maybe it was rare and different, immune to photography. Sensible and, if true, would enhance its significance. My only issue was showing them to my would-be colleagues, without whom I would have no credibility. I then had a thought, the microscope. Father kept one to inspect his own photos, as closely as he did my grades and chores. For once, I was glad he was so fastidious. I gathered my photos, again, delicately, and took them to the instrument. There, each was subject to its glare. Victory at last, every shape clear and unmistakable. Every ball of light, every bifurcation, every bob and dart. They tried to hide and tried their best, and succeeded with my naked eye, but were no match for technology. I crept to the first floor, clutching them tightly to my side. There I found a manila folder in the desk, inserted them, and slid it beneath my bed. Sleep did not come easily. Excitement saw to that. I tossed and turned, bouncing like a dying fish. How would I begin my paper? Introduce myself? Duplicate my photos? How would the field react? Still, my energy restored. When the sun shone through my window, I was prepared. I rolled to the side, reached beneath my bed, expecting to feel my sleeve between my fingers. I did not. It must be further back, I thought, and reached further. Still, it was not. At last, I stood and crouched, scanning the floor. It was gone. I was shocked, though there were two explanations. Either my mother, cleaning at dawn, mistook it for refuse and threw it out, or my brother was a bastard. If the former, I could simply retrieve it from the can. If the latter, I could strong-arm it from his possession, having experience in both. Just then, I heard my family on the first floor. I heard the toaster pop, the syrup pour. Having written my speeches, I descended the stairs. "Hey," they greeted drowsily. "Hey," I stated, and cut straight to the chase. "Mom, did you toss them?" I pressed. "Toss what?" she asked. I then described the night before, omitting my grand discovery. They needn't know until it was officially unveiled. Father was impressed. I had succeeded at using his equipment. Mother, at my using the envelopes. My brother said nothing at all, likely as he thought nothing at all. "I don't care one way or the other about your photos," she affirmed, her face crossing. This left the blame squarely on my brother, with whom I locked eyes intently. "Why are you looking at me like that? I didn't take them. I don't care about them either," he protested. That is to be confirmed, I spat back. He leapt to his feet as I spun and marched to the room, chasing after. A blow from my elbow kept him at bay. I then slammed and locked his door in his face. He drums his fists upon its surface. I ignored him. In minutes I had combed every square inch of his room. Even the reach his mother dare not tread. For once, it seemed, the brat had told the truth. My envelope was nowhere to be found. I did not care to apologize. I simply unlocked his door and stepped out, brushing him off. Retreating to my room, I gazed out my window and saw the sky was gray and cloudless. Between that and my dash dreams, I resolved simply to await sundown and fall asleep. That I did, eating in my room and reading pulp magazines. My astronomy digest stood on my shelves, but I couldn't bear to read them. My mother asked nothing when devouring my meals, but I could hear them discuss me. Let them, I thought. Non-scientists could never comprehend my loss. The day passed and they retired, passing my door and leaving me be. This was just as well. I was about to turn off my light when I felt a strange pull on my mind, a message from an unknown source. Not audible, mental. I had never felt it before and had no clue what it was. Naturally, I was unnerved. The message, an item waited in the mailbox, and I was to go and claim it. If I knew and could communicate with the source, I would have asked why. However, I could not. Mail was not delivered on Sunday. The sender must have himself. Most likely this was only my imagination. Still, I agreed. I crept from my room and down the stairs as quietly as I could. I couldn't risk waking my parents or an encounter with my brother. Pausing in the front doorway, I scanned our lawn for signs of intrusion. None availed, yet I still proceeded with caution. My walk to the mailbox was slow, taking longer than would be thought. I peered to my front, to my back, and to my sides, expecting but seeing no intruder. Reaching the mailbox, I opened its lid and reached inside, wondering what I would find. I withdrew a light paper item, which the moon revealed was a manila envelope. Mine. Excited and relieved, I darted back inside. Under the dim kitchen light, I beheld it. It must be a practical joke, played by a friend with my family's help. Who and how could be answered later, for then I was content. I opened the envelope and reached in, finding a sheet of paper. My relief turned to disappointment, then confusion, then quickly to fear. I withdrew and held the slip before me. Immediately I was perplexed. It was not like any paper I'd read or written on. Its color was egg white, its texture soft like silk. It had a sweet smell I had never before smelled. Its words were bright and luminous, in a substance I'd never seen. Greetings and salutations. We know you've discovered us, though you know not what we are or where we are from. We know you've recorded us and intended to share your documents. This is incompatible with our activities at this time, so we intervened. We apologize for any inconvenience. Drop. My hands went limp. The envelope fell to the table. My theory was unsustainable. I had no friends. I crouched, grabbed the slip, and slid it back in and closed the envelope, then crept to my bedroom. I leapt in bed and pulled my blankets over me, closed my eyes, and felt watched. I opened them, only to be blinded. A brilliant light glowed through my window. Frightened though aware, I gazed aside. There in the sky floated endless figures, human-like, made not of flesh and bone but light, swaying in space, wearing only flowing robes, watching me with countless pupilless eyes.